One of the things I'd like to ask the Biden administration, as you probably heard, there are two events that took place. We're talking about a friendly takeover, a friendly transition, as they like to say. This is a friendly transition, and it is, but there are two events that took place that I think are very terrible. One is that if people don't come back to work, come back into the office, they're going to be dismissed. And somebody in the Biden administration gave a 5-year waiver of that so that for 5 years, people don't have to come back into the office. It involved 49,000 people. For 5 years, they don't have to go. They just signed this thing. It's ridiculous. So it was like a gift to a union, and we're going to obviously be in court to stop.
The federal unions that represent workers are organizing and signing binding agreements to protect themselves before the Trump administration comes in place. Notice how Trump opposed the Social Security Administration's binding agreement with their workers that allow them to continue to telework because there's an opposition. So that is why, as I've said before, if you work for the federal government, that you need to sign up and join the union, find out what's going on, be ready so you don't have to get ready.
So apparently Elon Musk wants all the federal workers who work from home to be in the office. Like he wants them to all show up to work like Optimus Prime, ready to transform and serve or something. And I know what you're thinking. In-person work, the audacity. I mean, the same people that told us that we could file our taxes online or watch a moon landing on our phone now want Karen from accounting to have to risk traffic, parking, and then Greg's fish stinky sandwich that he leaves in the refrigerator every Friday. Don't even get me started on the productivity part.
Remote work has proven to be a game changer. Like, what? As a mother who has over 16 years in the federal government, who has a special needs child, remote work has been our family's only saving grace, honestly. And that's not saying that I'm working any less. I actually work more because I have the flexibility to do so. But decisions now about critical workforce evolution are being made by individuals who've never stepped a foot in the federal government. What are we going to do?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we have to talk about the government employees who are currently panicking over the fact that President-elect Trump has came out and said the party is over when it comes to remote work. You have to return back to the office. You got to show up, put on some clothes in the morning, wash your face, okay? Try to smell nice. Come into work and interact with other humans, which apparently is a foreign concept to some people, okay? That's a terrible thing for Trump to demand people to come into the office and to work amongst their peers, right, in person. Because you have the unions, which again is just crazy to think about how federal workers have unions, right? Kind of crazy. But anyways, federal workers, their unions have come together and they're trying to work out a plan with the Biden administration to stop Trump from forcing the federal workers back into the office. Take a look.
The new year will bring many changes, including a new presidential administration. President-elect Donald Trump warning federal workers they must return to office. We have Lisa Ryan with the Washington Post to explain the RTO debate. And Lisa, this looks like it's an uphill battle for the incoming Trump administration.
Hi, Katie. Well, it really depends on whether the administration decides that it wants to adhere to precedent or not. And we just really don't know which direction they're going to go in. So incoming President Donald Trump has said, look, we don't really trust that all these federal employees who are working from home are really working from home. We think that productivity in the federal government has taken a nosedive under President Biden, and we want people back in the office. And so this is likely to happen pretty early in the administration. The problem is that there are a lot of union contracts that employees who are covered by collective bargaining agreements are under. And the Biden administration is sort of racing right now, working with unions to kind of get those telework pieces in place so that to make it harder for the Trump administration to undo. So there's that, number one. And number two, there's potential space issues because, Republicans were very concerned that so many people were teleworking under the Biden administration, and they said to all these federal agencies, look, you have excess space. You've got to do something with that space. So that's happening too. A lot of agencies are cutting space. And so the question is, well, if you bring back all these employees, are they going to have a place to go?
Yeah, I think they are going to have a place to go, because I think what's going to end up happening, assuming that Trump will ignore the contracts that were made between the unions and the Biden administration, assuming Trump and Doge, they go through with this initiative to get federal workers back into the office, a lot of them are going to quit, right? A lot of them are going to say, you know what, I would much rather work from home in the private sector rather than to go into the office and work for the public sector, which will make it so there is less need for space, okay? But at the same time, we still have plenty of space that's not being used, okay, that taxpayers are paying for. Again, that doesn't even mention the productivity issue, the fact that a lot of these people that are working from home, clearly they're just skating by, right? They're watching Netflix all day, sitting around, eating, taking care of their pets and, doing all types of stuff instead of actually really working, right? And that's an issue because, again, this is something that taxpayers are paying for. And that in and of itself creates inefficiencies that leads to a bloated budget, right? It leads to the government having more workers than it needs and just more inefficiencies within the government that Doge was created to get rid of. So without further ado, I want to react to his news clip from News Nation, really going into more details about this current problem that we're facing when it comes to federal employees working from home.
We're going to talk a little bit more about Elon Musk here because he, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Doge have been talking a lot about this next topic, corruption, waste, how we can save money as a country because the lights are on and no one's at work. And this is something that Musk has talked about. President-elect Trump has said, members of the GOP party, they want to change that in Washington because they're empty offices that cost the government way too much money. I mean, the lights, the heat, the rent, there's nice furniture inside those offices, but nobody actually goes there because they can work from home. And there are things standing in the way of President Trump keeping a campaign promise to actually bring the people back to a 9-to-5 schedule, not in the comfort of their pajamas. News Nation's Joe Khalil just spoke with one top lawmaker pushing to bring remote workers back to in-person where we can all see them. Maybe only Fetterman wearing a sweatshirt, a hoodie, instead of every single member of the lawmaker's offices.
He's one of the ones that does it all the time.
Exactly.
I've seen others. I've seen Ted Cruz and a couple of others show up to vote wearing sneakers and stuff, too. Look, this is, as you point out, Adrian, it's one of the promises that President-elect Trump has already made, which is he says he's going to be bringing all of these workers or most of the workers back into offices. And for those who don't want to comply, he says they're going to be fired. Now, that's going to be a lot harder said than done, actually. But that is, again, a promise that he made. It's an issue that the House Oversight Committee has looked at. This is the result of a Government Office of Accountability report that came out a year ago. 24 federal office buildings in D.C., 17 out of those 24 have at 25% or less capacity. So a lot of empty space that we're talking about there. And the government spends roughly $2 billion a year maintaining and keeping the lights on in all of the buildings, another $5 billion a year to lease the space. So we talk.
Yeah, so you're talking about $2 billion to maintain empty office buildings. Nobody's there. Empty. $2 billion. That is by definition wasteful. And another $7 billion to maintain the leases. Again, this is crazy. This is insanity. Now, look, here's the thing. I'm going to be fair about this. I don't think this is just an issue of low-level federal workers who are working remotely, right? And their productivity and efficiency and making sure we're using the space that we're paying for. Also, on top of that, I do think that it's just better as an entity, right, as an organization to have people in person, okay? Because it improves teamwork, cooperation, coordination, communication. All these things are important, right? I like me personally, I'm the type that if I have a choice between a Zoom call or in-person meeting, I'm going with the in-person meeting, right? Face-to-face, because there's a level of understanding there's a level of real kind of personal interaction that you can get in person that you can't get over Zoom. Okay. To me, it's just not the same. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be allowed to work remotely at all. But I think working remotely every single day, 40 hours a week is probably too much, right? Maybe you get one day when you can work remote, maybe on a Friday or something like that. And, you rotate it, okay, amongst the employees, right? Friday, Monday, maybe the middle of the week or something like that. I have no issues with that, right? But permanent remote work, I think is a big problem. I think it's a huge issue. But again, I don't think this just applies to the federal workers. I also would like to see the actual politicians work more, right? The politicians take a whole lot of vacations, okay, when they could be actually spending time figuring out how to balance the budget, right? How to actually do what the American people voted for them to do. So again, it's not just the federal workers that need to work more. Also, the politicians, the elected officials need to be working more. Hell, the president of the United States, the current one, Joe Biden, who has spent 40% of his presidency on vacation, he should be working more, right? From the top down, the federal government, right? They need to be working more. We need to be getting more out of our tax dollars, period, from top to bottom.
Talk to James Comer. He's the Republican chairman of the House Oversight Committee. He acknowledged, though, the challenge in bringing all these workers back is going to be a difficult one. A lot of their federal contracts have specific clauses in them allowing for at least part-time, if not full-time, remote work. So he expects there could be legal challenges. And this is what else he told us this morning.
And this will probably head to court. But in the court of public opinion, I think the people that work hard every day and have to go to work and pay taxes, I don't think they're very happy with the fact that such a high percentage of the federal workforce is working from home, and they're not held accountable like the employees who work for the federal government who have to go to the office every day.
No, Adrian, this is not a simple situation. It gets complicated. And if you talk to some of the unions that represent some of these federal workers, what they will tell you is if you're really trying to save money, taxpayer dollars, the solution is not to look at those expensive buildings and to fill them back up with workers. The solution, they would argue, is to consolidate a lot of that workspace. Maybe the federal government can sell off some of these federal buildings and, again, make smarter use of the space you have, and then continue to allow some of federal workers to work from home or work remotely in that way, as long as they're not slacking on their work or they're getting their work done. They say that's actually the way to save money.
Well, I mean, to be honest, both needs to happen, right? You need to downsize the federal workforce because, again, a lot of these people are not needed. But also you need to downsize some of the office spaces as well, too. That's not needed, okay? Both of those things need to be done, to be honest with you, okay? But again, the unions, they don't want any of the workers to get fired, right? They want the workers to be able to do whatever the hell they want to do and to take advantage of living off the taxpayer dime while not being as productive as they should be. And that's not to say that all federal workers are not productive. I'm just saying that what you're really trying to cut out here are the slackers, right? Are the people who aren't as productive as they should be. Because again, it costs taxpayers money to fund this type of stuff. That's what people got to understand. It's not a private entity, okay, where, hey, if you have these inefficiencies, you go out of business, right? You actually suffer punishment. No, it's the government. And the government theoretically can just print more money. So there's not a big incentive for the federal government to try to get rid of these inefficiencies because ultimately they solve problems by printing more money. Oh, well, we got inefficient workers, so what? We'll just print more money, right? We rather do that than do the hard work and figure out who's cutting it and who's not cutting it, right? And the people that's not cutting it, hey, you got to go. It is what it is. That's what happens to everyday normal people. Everyday normal people got to get up and go to work every single day. Why shouldn't federal workers have to do so? Especially considering how regular, normal, everyday people are the ones that are funding their salaries and their jobs.
So that's one point there. The other point is that's going to be hard. You talked about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. They're talking about getting rid of up to 2 million federal workers was the goal they put out at the beginning. Let's remember, the federal government is the largest employer in the country. If you end up laying off hundreds of thousands of workers, that is not going to be an easy thing to do, especially because these people have families, right? I mean, they do work for the federal government. Taxpayer money pays their salaries. But if you've got all of these people being laid off and then looking for work, that in itself could be complicated. And, that may generate a lot of headlines that, frankly, the incoming administration does.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. This is why you also cut taxes. You also deregulate. You create a business-friendly environment for growth in which there will be plenty of job opportunities for anybody who loses their job as a result of the federal government becoming more efficient, right? This is why you also create an environment, an economic environment that incentivizes growth, okay, so that there are job opportunities. Because if these government workers really have valuable skills in the marketplace, they should have no issues getting a job in the private sector. I'm just saying, if they're really that valuable, they should have no issues, honestly, getting a better job, right? Getting a better job with a private entity. Now, if they can't get a job in the private workspace, then what does that tell you, right? If the government employees, if they're only qualified to work for the government, then that tells you that the government is hiring a bunch of people that probably shouldn't have jobs and are not very productive, right? I'm just saying that's what that is a sign of, okay? That's the honest to God truth. So, again, my guess is that most of these government employees, again, since they're so valuable, right, they should be able to get jobs in the private sector. And, hey, it is what it is. But I will say this. The one thing I do not like about this story is the fact that Democrats, the Biden administration, they're trying to undermine Trump before he even gets into office, right? You got Democrats trying to Trump-proof their states for mass deportations. You got Democrats, Biden trying to make it harder for federal workers to be fired. Like, again, they're doing everything they can to try to stop the America First agenda. And it's sad. It really is. Losers trying to mess up Trump's administration before he could even get into office, right? And then they'll turn around and they say, look, Trump didn't fulfill his promise. Trump didn't do this. Trump didn't do that, right? But Trump had to jump through all these hoops that Democrats put in place before he got in office. It's amazing how that works. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.